Woodcraft, helping you make woodwork.
We're going to get into blotchy land when we put our stain on. And stain is an absorbent, whether it's water-based or whether it's oil-based. It is designed to absorb into whatever you're putting it on. So obviously you can't stain steel very good because there's no absorption there. If you sand or scuff through your clear coat, you're going to get down to the raw wood. It's going to absorb a whole lot more than it does in the existing clear coat. So that creates a blotch. Something to keep in mind, if you have a blotch, you can work around it. There are ways that you can blend it in, just using a little bit more stain in places, letting it sit longer, being a little bit creative. But do you see how it just turns that white color? That's just scuffing. And when you wipe it off, that white kind of goes away, but the shine is gone. Still a little bit shiny, but the extreme shine is gone. That is scuffing. If we were completely sanding, we would go all the way down through the clear coat, through the stain, into the raw wood, and you'd have the color of the wood. We're not doing that. So it's all going to stay the same color that is on it. So be really diligent that you don't go through your clear coat. And I just put my hand on my wood surface, which is, you know, it's okay. It's not going to hurt it that much. I just get into a professional thing and try not to put any more contaminants on than I've taken off. So, anybody got any questions while I'm quickly going around this cabinet door? Okay.
Steel wool?
You know, steel wool leaves a residue afterwards, a little bitty parts of steel and wool. And you're not going to see it a lot of the times until you put that clear coat on, and then it's a little late. So I highly recommend do not use steel wool. Steel wool is good for polishing afterwards, buffing things out with a lubricant, but not on its own. I think steel wool is a great product, but I also think that it needs a lubricant because it scratches easily. Even your 4/0 is going to scratch. You know, they sell polishing lubricants for afterwards, just to pick up the shine or take out little bubbles or imperfections. You know. And that it's wonderful for that, very much so. To clean an existing piece, it's good for that because water is a lubricant. But I would not advise it to do any overcoats or refinishing or anything like that. Your basic sandpaper really is your best tool. The blocks work pretty good, but you know, the downfall to the blocks is when you're getting in these grooves, you know, you can't bend a block like you can bend a piece of sandpaper. And it's faster, it's easier. I'm all into fast and easy in my life. It's not a Camaro, it's a Chevelle. Okay, next week we're going to have car identification 101. So come back and we'll do cars. You know, it's amazing how similar automotive is to furniture. A lot of similarities there. Not that one, not that particular one, but I did a Mustang. Well, we spent 15 years working on a Mustang, and it had 8 layers of paint, and 1 layer at a time I stripped them all off. It was crazy. Somebody asked me another question while I'm doing this.
So do you still have an answer?
Yes, I do. I love car questions. Throw them at me. I do. In fact, it was a challenge. What was I going to drive today? The husband's car or my car?
So are you going to get into blending later?
We can talk about some blending later. Absolutely, remind me. And because you know what, there is no perfect cabinet door out there. There's always going to be some imperfections. Something we didn't talk about are repairs. If you're changing your hardware, a lot of times the distance between the screw holes are different. And so you can use one hole, but you can't use them both. If you go from a pull to a knob, then you use one, you don't use two. If you're eliminating a hole, get a dowel, the same size as the hole, put glue on it, put the dowel in, cut it off flush, and then sand it flush. And then we'll talk about blending with that. If you're having to, well, you're always going to eliminate one if they're not the same size, because one is always going to be off. So that's the best way to eliminate a hardware hole. If you have pocks or bangs or dents, or, you know, dents are kind of different, but any little bit of pinholing or I don't know, any imperfections, screw holes that you want to, if you change your hinge hardware. Timbermate makes an excellent wood putty. It's a water base and it smells a little quirky, but it stains really well. And the nice thing about this is if you don't use it frequently and it dries up, add a teaspoon of water and let it sit overnight and it reactivates. There are hardly any other putties out there that will do that. And most of them are solvent based. And this is water based, and it's very user friendly, and it's very health friendly too. If you have a really big hole that you don't want to dowel, or it's kind of awkward sized, it's tore out, whatnot, this Quickwood putty, it's a two-part epoxy. And basically it comes in a tube. You cut a little part off. The center is one color, the outer is another color, and you just mix it in your fingers until you get a uniform color, and you push it on in the grooves and let it cure for about an hour, hour and a half, and then lightly sand it smooth. Strong stuff, good stuff. It beats having to cut a section out and graph in a new piece of wood. When you get into that kind of repair, you're always going to disrupt the finish. You can do this kind of repair and this without disrupting your finish, which won't give you blotchiness later on. So a couple good hints right there if you're changing, especially if you're changing your hinges. A lot of times hinges are in the face and we now put them in the back. Every decade I think they change the hinge style. So depending on your kitchen and the area it's from. The biggest thing about this overcoat is it's wonderful if you're going darker. It doesn't work for nothing if you're going lighter. You cannot go lighter. If you're going to go lighter, you're going to have to strip the color off, which is a lot of sanding and chemical in your house. They do have user-friendly chemicals, the orange stripper and any natural citrus oil stripper. The soy stripper we carry back here, I've used it, it works well. They just take a little bit longer than your big chemical ones, but they are very much healthier and safer. Most everybody has raised panels. This is a very difficult spot to sand. I wish I could give you this really great secret, but here it is. Diligence. It's all about diligence. You know, it's really important that you hit it, and if you go across, you're going to get cross scratches, so you want to go with the grain, and it's just a frame of mind. That's all it is. Just get your fingers in there and just work it back and forth, and when you get to the end, you're going to have to flip it over and do the other side, because you'll never get all the way to the edge. Yeah, very much so. Because if you get in a rush, you're going to get an angle line through your clear coat, and you will see that when you put your next clear coat on. So it's just all about a frame of mind. I usually turn the stereo up and just kind of hang out with my finger sanding.
Now, how does this stuff work over wood that you strip, like citrus strip? I refinish quite a bit of furniture.
Uh-huh.
So how does that stuff work?
Fabulous. Yeah, it's a really good stain. I mean, it works really well with raw wood. And it works really well with an overcoat. So,
Well, I got one now. I wish you could do a fix for me. I got a vanity that I used had a red candle. And the red candle
went all over it. That's terrible. We're talking about candles being dripped onto a wood surface, which is really hard because wax is probably the worst contaminant on wood when you're trying to put a finish on. Wax is very hard to eliminate. The first thing I would do in that situation is I would take a putty knife and I would scrape off as much as I could. And then I would get my mom's iron out because I don't like to iron. And she really taught me I don't like to iron as a young child. And a piece of cheesecloth or linen, a towel, something very dry and absorbent. And I would put the iron on high, no steam, high, just heat the cloth over it and just try and work it out into your cloth. After that, I would come back with lacquer thinner and just saturate it with lacquer thinner. And hopefully that it's not deep enough to where you don't have to use an acid. If it gets very deep into the pores of the wood, muriatic acid is about the only thing that takes it out. So, you know, we try everything before we have to get there, and I'm sanding the wrong way. Because I'm talking about irons. Muriatic acid, if you have to go to that, it'll take every bit of your finish and every bit of your stain. It usually helps it, but if you're in a refinish situation, it's the perfect product to use after you've scraped it off. And learning from experience, anytime that I have wax on a piece that I'm refinishing, when I get to my finish mode, I do a little test sample over the top of that to make sure that it doesn't alligator or fisheye or do anything weird, that I got it all out, because I don't want to have to redo the whole piece again. That's huge. It's huge. Probably muriatic acid. And when you use that, folks, it's not safe at all. It's do it outside on a nice day, pour it on there, and walk away. Don't be upwind of it. Don't try and breathe it. Most of your respirators won't work because they're not designed for acid, and it just eats the carbon inside the respirator. So respirators aren't the greatest thing because it just traps it a little bit closer to you, and you breathe that more and more and more. Good ventilation, just get out of it, let it do its thing, and then take a bucket of water, whoosh, water dilutes it and unactivates it. And that's the best you can do. The heat in the iron should work really well with that biggest spot because it is such a big spot. Your iron should take up a lot of it. Just don't use steam. Steam actually turns it into more of a liquid form and it goes further into your pores. And then it's terrible. So, if we were in a perfect world, we would have a big compressor right here, and I would take it and I would blow all of this off. But you're in your kitchen, so you don't really have that perfect world. A shop vac works good. Your vacuum cleaner out of